I reread all of Jujutsu Kaisen from chapter 1 all the way up to chapter 222, and can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, Gege Akutami, I still will never forgive you for what you did to Junpei. For real though, I did reread all of Jujutsu Kaisen since the third season of its anime adaptation is currently releasing, and I want to be fully in the loop of information and Easter eggs before it's too late. I first watched JJK back in 2023 knowing absolutely nothing about it, so of course I ended up enjoying it, but was unaware that a season 2 was airing weekly, so I was actually really confused about what was happening in the story since the hidden inventory arc was taking place, and I was very uneducated about it, so I had no idea about anything that was going on. Even though it feels like it was just yesterday, 2023 is now officially 3 entire years ago, as in 731 days ago. Happy New Year's, by the way, everybody. I needed a reread, especially since my first introduction to the series was extremely all over the place with spoilers within square inches of me no matter where I looked. So in this video, I'll give some of my thoughts on events that take place and of course why Jujutsu Kaisen's The Culling Game will be its best arc. Obviously, there will be spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to spoil yourself, I'd suggest bookmarking this video for a later date instead. Make sure you leave a like on the video to support the channel, and if you like this type of commentary, discussion, sword-esque of content, make sure you subscribe for more. But with that being said, let's get into this reread and find out why The Culling Game will be its best arc. The series has already taken multiple crazy twists throughout the first 11 chapters alone, with me noticing so much foreshadowing and story buildups that my pea-sized brain from 3 years ago couldn't catch on to or care about at the time. I won't lie, after reading and watching the season 1 fights again, which contain the fearsome womb arc, the versus Mahito arc, the Kyoto Goodwill event arc, and lastly the death painting arc, I'll admit that I definitely have found a new love for all these characters. I cared for them before, but after situations like the Goodwill event arc, which I originally thought was very lackluster and boring, I definitely enjoyed everybody way more. To wrap that section up, my conclusion is that the first half of JJK Season 1 is way better than the second half, with so much foreshadowing and exciting story beats taking place. The Goodwill event arc is still more or less iffy to me, but I at least appreciate it way more now, and the death painting arc was absolute cinema. I know it's funny to dog on Megumi, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hype when he gave his all and even managed a half-assed domain expansion, killing a special grade. Jujutsu Kaisen's first 4 arcs get a total of 7.8 out of 10. Instead of heading straight into reading the high arc, I wanted to watch it in release order to really submerge myself into the JJK world again, so I put on Jujutsu Kaisen.
I hate monkeys.
Jujutsu Kaisen 0. I love Yuta. I personally try my best to ignore the agenda jokes and we just be hating on anybody nowadays, I guess. I've watched the movie 3 times now, and there's not much to say that hasn't already been said before, but I'll ask you guys, if the manga has different content in it that wasn't adapted or it's just worthy of picking up, kindly let me know in the comments and I'll just go purchase it. I think this arc is pretty much perfect, with a great character introduction and a way more intriguing origin story than Yuji. Great side cast, fun and simple plot, and of course Geto as the main villain was just pure comedy and peak, with me really wondering if the voice actor was even acting in that booth with the way this man kept mentioning his hatred for monkeys. Upon rewatch, the Cursed Child arc gets an easy 9 out of 10. The Hidden Inventory arc is always such a pleasant and fun read until you reach the Star Plasma Vessel and shit just gets bananas. I could yap about this arc forever, but I'll just put it this way. In my own personal opinion, I think that without this arc, JJK would still be entertaining, but it would not be as good as it currently is. It's just so much well-needed information and story building, while also being a breath of fresh air. And without the Hidden Inventory, this series would not be as popular as it currently is. And with that being said, it gets an easy 10 out of 10 from me. Oh, Shibuya. I'm always a believer that you don't need death for the stakes of a story to feel grand, but in Jujutsu Kaisen's case, it works since it's literally a manga about doing your job as a sorcerer or literally dying on the job. I'll always feel bad for Nanami because bro was really the realest there was. He hated working a 9 to 5, and he also hated being a sorcerer, but still chose to be one since it was just less boring for him and it actually served a good purpose. I think Kenjaku's Halloween plan was executed in such a weird but interesting way. Not weird in a bad way, but weird as an interesting. It was unique, and all the iconic cursed spirits had really enjoyable fights and deaths too. I like the random story inclusion that Choso and Yuji are actually related, and it proves to be an amazing storytelling choice almost immediately. The Yuta slander of him getting on a late plane to Shibuya so he could purposely avoid fighting is still the funniest shit ever years later. Shibuya is more than solid. It's an amazing follow-up to the hidden inventory arc and a great payoff to a plan so early in the making of Jujutsu Kaisen. You're gonna say I'm glazing, but come on, it's another 10 out of 10. Now that I've gotten the adapted arcs out of the way and have done my reread of the Culling Game, I can now fully dissect every single part of it and explain how Jujutsu Kaisen's The Culling Game is truly the series' best arc. I'm also well aware of the restrictions for the Culling Game itself to officially end, so for the sake of the video, I'll be stopping at the end of chapter 222, since what follows immediately after that chapter is the iconic start to the Shinjuku Showdown arc. If we're going off the anime's adaptation, we start off with Yuji's execution back on the table due to Gojo being sealed, and the higher-ups are obviously fans of this since they wanted to kill Yuji off rip anyway for eating Sukuna's finger. While this is happening, Naoya is being crowned head of the Zenin clan since everyone else in the family just so happens to be bums and unworthy. It's then revealed that since Gojo's full box, Toji cut a deal back in the day that if the 6 sides were ever off the table, then Megumi would be welcomed into the clan with open arms and become the next head of the Zenin. Naoya hears about this, and without hesitation, he's on a mission to find Megumi and put him down along with Yuji Itadori. We cut back to the brothers from another body after a beautiful yap sesh. Like, seriously? Who directed the scene? We see they're on a mission to take down as many cursed spirits as possible in order to save others and be of service. How noble of them. It's unfortunately interrupted by Naoya's bum ass asking for where Fushiguro is, and then followed up by him throwing hands with sauce like you've never even seen before. Wait a minute. Bro, that shit wasn't even in the manga! Our experience is then interrupted again by none other than the descendant of the Sugawara clan himself, Yuta Okotsu. Our happiness then goes away as we realize that Yuta is actually Yuji's executioner. A few short sentences later, and it's back to hands being thrown. And at first, it seemed like Choso was being bullied, I'm not gonna lie, but tell me why whole time Naoya was really out here doing 1 damage every hit? Like, let's talk about this for a sec. 24 moves in a second is his curse technique, right? Let's say it takes him 6 moves to reach Choso. You're telling me after 18 other hits, this man Choso is still standing and isn't bleeding? So in return, this man Naoya pulls out a knife! And listen, either Choso's durability is just that crazy, or Naoya is more of a bum than I actually thought he was. The peak unfortunately comes to an end later on when the Queen of Curses third parties and gets Yuji killed by Yuta stabbing him through his heart. We're then revealed that secretly Yuta was actually on our side from the very beginning, but had to fully kill off Yuji because of his binding vow with the higher-ups, but then was able to bring him back to life once again because of his reverse curse technique. During their friendly midnight yab sesh, Yuji explains that he's still feeling guilty over Sukuna taking so many lives in Shibuya, and then Megumi reminds Yuji that they're in Jujutsu Kaisen and not My Hero Academia. He tells us, bro, fine, do you want to save people that bad? Then start by saving me. Fate Gato has set up plans for a Culling Game and my sister's forced to play in it, so help me. Yuji follows up by asking Yuta to kill him if Sukuna tries something funny. Then they make plans to head to Jujutsu High where Yuki is in order to figure out how they can meet with Tengen and speak with him. I'm gonna sidebar here and say that this Nobara moment wasn't great in the manga because it was fully up to the reader to decide what it meant, which is fine, sure, but then Mappa adapted it even quicker, putting less of an emphasis on such an important small detail, and I don't know, I just thought given what happens down the line, they'd want to let that moment breathe a second longer, but that's just my take on it. We then make it to Jujutsu High, where we find out one of my favorite characters in the entire series is still alive due to her being tough. And that's literally what they say, which I can fully agree with. Choso then leads us into the tomb where not only the rest of his brothers are located, but also the woman of the hour, Tengen herself. The episode covering this dropped right now as of 2 days ago, and in my honest, most respectful opinion, it has to be one of the greatest adapted Yap episodes ever. I know Attack on Titan and Hunter x Hunter have very highly rated Yap episodes, but what I mean is the Culling Game rules and objectives are a lot for someone to process in one sitting, so for Mappa to make it all very up in your face and have visuals throughout the entire thing is so fun and entertaining. Is it still a lot of information that not everybody will take in? Absolutely. Is it more entertaining and easier to take in? Absolutely. Mappa did a great job. And if you were thinking I was gonna go over every rule myself, hell no! You can go ahead and watch the episode for yourself, buddy. I'm not repeating all that. Takaba's introduction in the chapter initially made me think that Nanami's curse technique could be passed on or something due to his final line in the chapter being about percentages and ending on 70-30. Oh boy, was I wrong. I'm going in order of the manga, so what I'm gonna talk about right now came before the next section of the story, so if you're confused about the order, that's why. Unfortunate events happen in which we see Yaga detained for reasons I can only assume to be that he's about to be murdered since the higher-ups have asked for his execution. He says farewell to his cursed corpses and we cut to Panda being freed from his knots by Kusakabe, who owed Yaga a favor. We cut back and see that the favor was because Yaga made a cursed corpse from Takaru's information for Kusakabe's sister whose son passed away. We then cut away again, but this time to present time, in which a sorcerer is trash-talking Yaga, acting like a big shot. We then see the Kyoto principal show up and attack him with a fatal blow. Yaga then tells Gakuganji what's necessary to make a cursed corpse and how it can self-sustain itself and create a personality, claiming that it's a curse he's passing down. Panda then shows up and gives arguably one of the top 70 saddest moments in JJK. And yeah, that's it. It's definitely a section, in my opinion. Story jumps to Maki immediately about that business trash-talking Naoya, only for him to start spouting out the worst things a man can possibly say to a woman immediately after. We flash back to Maki high-key forcing Megumi to become head of the Zenin so she can get some cursed tools. Her mom starts hating per usual, and we proceed to see the failure Ogi Zenin, or OG Zenin, her father, waiting for her on the other side of the door trying to aura farm, while his other daughter Mai is bleeding out behind him. We cut to see Bum Naoya and Jinichi talking, forming a plan about killing every obstacle in their path, whilst revealing to us that Ogi Zenin, Maki and Mai's father, wants to kill his own daughter since he thinks they're the reason he's a bum and couldn't amount to anything. But the thing is, Maki's about that action, so she wastes no time and starts attacking her pops. Unfortunately for Maki, she lets her guard down and gets slashed through her side. Their pops ends up throwing them both in a room full of curses, expecting both of them to be chowed on like some lunch. Fortunately for us, Mai has a plan to save her sister though, but that plan involves dying, and Maki's not a fan of that. Mai explains that both of them being alive doesn't amount to much since their abilities are split due to them being twins. So even if Maki gets stronger, if Mai doesn't, it's practically worthless since they're treated as one, not as individuals. Mai then takes the cursed energy, binding them as twins, and creates a sword for Maki out of their cursed energy before she dies, which in return leaves Maki the same as Toji, a monster with zero cursed energy. Her father then almost pops a blood vessel because he starts getting some crazy PTSD. He sees Maki and gives her one of the craziest aura lobs in JJK history by making a comparison to Toji once he sees her reborn. He quickly activates his technique and then doesn't even get a chance to strike. Ogi Zenin ends up being killed by the one he deemed unworthy. The Kukuru unit proceeds to come after her upon this happening, and after a few final thoughts about her sister, she gets to working these boys. Slice after slice after slice. You think she was a chef the way she was cooking! After putting in the work with the fodder, Nobuaki, Chojuro, Jinichi, and Ranta show up to put in some pain. Doesn't quite go to plan, however, once Chojuro and Nobuaki get their throats ripped out. Jinichi gets off screen, and Ranta dies due to his own curse technique. Lame-ass Naoya Naoya once again shows up on the screen, and even though you beg Gege Akutami to take him off, he still gets the longest fight regardless. Naoya gives an aura lob as well when he's remembering Toji, and then starts crying the entire sequence of him whooping Maki's ass, complaining that she is not Toji and that she doesn't deserve to stand with the strongest, rather that he does. However, the entire time he's been whining, she's been actively trying to count the frames in his curse technique in order to match his speed. She catches him off guard when he's still talking shit, and finally caves his face in with a single punch. Maki, of course, holding her promise, confronts her mother shortly after, which leads to her own mother's blood being spilled as well. Luckily for us, she helps us out by finishing off the injured Naoya, who's still crawling around, and who knows how she managed to do this in her condition. But hooray! After something so peak built up so long ago, especially if you read Volume 0, our story takes us to our main character and his best friend, who are on a mission to find Kinji Hakari, who is seriously in my top 10 favorite characters from this show. The bouncers won't let them in until Megumi says something lucky, which is ironic looking back given who they're trying to meet. Yuji then starts learning the rules about Fight Club from Tyler here, and we see his opponent is actually Panda, who is here also to try and talk to Hakari. Their plan works with Yuji getting invited into the room, and I'm sorry, I know the potential man jokes are funny, but oh my god, Megumi during the Culling Games is where he's at his peak. I'm not gonna deny it any longer. He is so unseriously fire in like every single scene he's in. Anyway, Panda and Megumi make it to the roof outside the room that Hakari's in, but quickly get spotted by Kirara. So knowing the circumstances, they all immediately get to work. Kirara unleashes her curse technique, which has to do with constellations and distance, while Hakari starts teaching Yuji about the art of scamming. He explains that everybody has a fever to better their lives, and I also had a fever recently in the process of making this video, so if you wanted to leave a like and subscribe real quick, I'd greatly appreciate that. Hakari tells Yuji there's a point to gambling, and it's to win. Nobody hates gambling, they hate losing, and wanting to win is a fever. Fever is living and loving is control of that same fever, and that's why he has a fight club. He controls the fever in a way that Jujutsu society shunned him for. Just as he's giving Yuji the method though, his girl calls, and listen, when your girl calls you randomly, you know something's up. And Hakari's not new to this, so he gets to work with moves straight out of Jujutsu shenanigans, giving Yuji no time to explain himself. While this is going on inside, Megumi's outside trying to solve Kirara's quiz on astronomy. He soon figures out her curse technique and which markings he has to go through in order to reach her, so once he does, he then doesn't whoop her ass, but begs her to hear them out. Hakari didn't get the memo yet though, so Yuji sent flying out the door. Going along with their plan though, Yuji is still refusing to fight back, insisting that Hakari listens instead. While he's taking these blows like a prime all might, they end up working things out thanks to Kirara, and end up explaining some lore to each other and get to talking about the Culling Game. Thanks to Kogen, they figure out who they have to find and talk to in order to make a rule. Hirome Higuruma and Hajime Kashimo. We're introduced to Higuruma next, and immediately he becomes a character in your top 20. He works as a defense attorney in a society where 99.9% of cases end up as guilty, so you can assume he's been losing hairs in his sleep due to stress. There's not much else to say besides how beautiful of an introduction he has, and the fact that he's already a better character than Nanami was ever within his first chapter alone. We witness non-sorcerers, including Yuji's friends from chapter 1, be given the chance to exit the colonies, and then see our sorcerers enter the game finally after discussing their objectives with one another. But once we enter the colonies, it's straight to work. They try jumping Yuji, but they aren't aware that the vessel of Sukuna isn't new to this. So even though him and Megumi are asking around for Higuruma, they aren't afraid to throw hands for information. And while Megumi gets set up like some dominoes, Itadori's #1 fan actually helps him find Higuruma. Higuruma's been cold like that though, so he's not worried about Yuji for a second and gets to asking questions. After trying to get through to each other with words, Yuji realizes Higuruma's not easy like that, so he's ready to start boxing. Unfortunately for him, Higuruma pulls out the files on this man and pops his ult to ask whether or not Yuji's guilty of playing slots when he was younger. Yuji gets caught red-handed and gets his cursed energy taken away due to not having a cursed technique, which is the effect of the domain. They get to boxing, and after Yuji gets his ass whooped a little bit, Yuji gets the idea to retry. But upon hearing what he's accused of the second time, our GOAT main character takes the blame, resulting in Higuruma being granted the Executioner's Blade. And after a quick lock-in and storytelling beat, Higuruma ends up using his points to add a rule that allows the transfer of points between one another. While that was happening, Megumi was out here trying to prove to everyone how tough he really is. Like I've said twice before, the Bumgumi jokes are hilarious. I know, but I simply won't lie. He's really like that in this arc. Megumi is set up and has to fight not one, not two, not three, but 4 sorcerers at once. Takaba ends up making a glorious first appearance to help out, of course, but regardless, Megumi still had to hold his own, and the fight's not even over for him yet. After Megumi tries reaching for Regi's day, and Takaba sticks his fingers up Hazanuki's sweet spot, Regi reveals his curse technique to Megumi, but Megumi's not having none of it. They keep on boxing, but Megumi's thinking ahead. He knows that he can't make a full domain yet, so instead, he'll use the surrounding area as a placeholder for it. They end up whooping each other's ass beyond belief, making the fight 10 times more entertaining than anything Fujimoto's written about in ages. They have an unhinged ass climax, making me unsure who even comes out on top of this fight, but the boy with the 10 shadows wins and gains all of Regi's points after beating him, plus the 5 for killing Regi. I've heard people suggest that the Sendai colony is where the first core of season 3 will end off at. Now, I do wish that the season wasn't split into 2 cores. I'm personally not a fan of that, and I know One Piece is doing it now too, and I don't know, maybe it's something I'll get used to, but I prefer the 25 weekly episodes rather than those episodes split across the months. Regardless of my opinion though, I believe that the first core ending here would be the funniest and most hype thing ever. Yuta's a GOAT, and his 1v3 against Ryu, Kurorushi, and Uro is one of the most entertaining fights in the entire series in my opinion. There's just so much to go over, so I'd rather gloss over it and say my favorite moments instead. Yuta's introduction is so cold. I mean, when is he not though? Let's be honest. His objective is to gain points and add rules, yes, but then he gets some personality thrown into the mix too, with Yuta caring about others and claiming that he'll take on the burden of defeating Kenjaku so that his sensei won't have to see his friend pass away a second time. His fight with Uru and Ryu's third party ass is seriously peak, and just when you think it's finishing up, the Rika merchant pops his ult and summons the Queen of Curses herself, which is fine since he was getting 2v1'd anyway, so let's be fair, right? There's no reason for him to hold himself back, you know? Anyway, I love the fact that he's using a glove-like curse tool rather than his regular katana, since it fully allows us to see Yuta pop off in some hand-to-hand combat for once. And just when you thought the fight couldn't get any better, we finally learn Yuta's curse technique, which is to copy other techniques, which I'm not gonna lie, doesn't help with the fraud allegations, but it's fine. Listen, I know it's already hype, but come on. A 3-way domain expansion? It unfortunately gets canceled out thanks to the cockroach clone that squeezed in last second, and Jujutsu Kaisen gets back to its regularly scheduled program, and Yuta and Ryu create some of the most glorious panels I've ever laid my eyes upon. Yuta ends up winning, and let's be honest, of course he does, but if I'm being real, he should have finished off Ryu and done him a favor then and there, cause honestly, I think he would have preferred that fate to the one he ends up getting down the line. After a couple story beats, we're with Hakari who's shit-talking a failed mangaka so that he can have enough reason to fight. And after some life story yap goes by, we're finally going back to the aura and hype moments. Our JJK version of Night Eye here is currently getting outplayed insanely by our dropout sorcerer Hakari, who actually ends up popping his domain expansion too, since he just refuses to go easy on this guy. We end up learning the rules of his domain, and I can honestly make a tier list ranking the domains people have, because this is getting absurd. Literally, how can Gege make something this unique so many times? Anyway, Hakari's domain rules are the funniest thing ever, and Buddy ends up standing no chance to the point where the rest of their fight was literally off-screen. Panda unfortunately has the privilege of running into Kashimo, and to say the least, he gets no-diffed by a Heian era sorcerer in the nicest way possible. We then see see Panda's innate domain, in which, after a very well done metaphorical sequence, we can comprehend that Panda's siblings, but to be specific, cores, have now left him, meaning that they took his pain for him so that he can keep going and live on. For some reason, I never see anybody talk or hype up this fight anymore, but after reading Hakari versus Kashimo again, it's easily in my top 3 most anticipated fights to see. The choreography is just pure insanity, and the battle IQ these two have is immaculate. I know on the surface it could seem like they're just spamming random bullshit to gain hype moments and aura, but once you actually take a longer glance, you begin to realize this fight is really an all chips on the table situation, with them just boxing because both of their lives are genuinely depending on it. I really like this fight because you can literally learn so much about these characters in such a short amount of time, how they think, what they care about, how they react, and the best part is, with them both being new characters in the series being Jujutsu Kaisen, you're really on your feet the entire time wondering who's gonna come out on top by the end of this. I'll admit, the aura and hype moments of Hakari popping his domain and getting his ult 3 times during their fight got me hype every time. But yeah, it's just so entertaining and interesting to witness play out, so I'm not sorry. Their boxing eventually comes to an end, and they end up tying, and Hakari finishes up his part in the Culling Game by returning to his buddy that he defeated off screen and telling him to pick up a pencil and lock in. Can you believe we're barely halfway through this arc? It's crazy there's so much peak already, but Gege Akutami just refuses to let his pencil relax. So I gotta ask, if you're enjoying this video, I appreciate every like and subscription I can get. I'm still fairly new to the scene, and I'm trying to put out worthwhile videos instead of half-ass ones, but they do take a lot of time to create, so I appreciate anybody who chooses to support me. If you recall, earlier in the story, Maki's mother came through and was happy to finish the job killing Naoya, but unfortunately for us, since he wasn't killed with cursed energy or a cursed tool, Naoya was able to transform into a curse after he died and proceeded to track down Maki. I'm really glad Kamo is with her, since he was easily one of the characters I didn't give a fuck about during the Goodwill event arc, so it's really satisfying to see him get the spotlight, and not just as a blood manipulation user, but as an actual character with personality as well. The entire fight is entertaining, with Maki and Kamo actually having to take Naoya serious now that he's an actual threat, but it's not until 2 new sorcerers appear that the story takes an interesting turn. Maki has a heart-to-heart with one of them where he helps her realize that she's overthinking her situation and that she needs to be more at ease and just feel her surroundings. She needs to just know, and knowing comes with being aware. Only then can you feel freedom and be prepared to accomplish your goal. In case you thought she already maxed out her stats, you're wrong, because after the lesson in sumo, her and the other sorcerers start jumping this man. He ends up popping his ult for the first and last time in the series, and even though it's OP and creepy, Maki is just on another level. So she isn't affected by his barrier rules and ends up winning against this man again. I'm sorry. Even though I play as Naoya in Jujutsu Shenanigans, his actual character is so trash. He has no impact and will forever be a failure. So thank you, Gege Akutami, for giving us such a hateable character. At this point in the story, we start nearing our end to the Culling Game, and our main characters are now plotting on their next moves, discussing things like points, Angel's Curse technique, removing Gojo's seal, and killing Sukuna. In the midst of all that, we flash back to the month before the Shibuya incident, where Kenjaku is speaking to the President of the United States about sorcerers and cursed energy. They cut a deal and agreed to let the military invade the colonies in order to abduct sorcerers to run tests on, but primarily it's because Kenjaku wanted to pick up the pace and speed up the merger. So having non-sorcerers get obliterated benefits him, and having non-sorcerers kill sorcerers also benefits him. I remember a lot of fans being disappointed about the merger plot that Kenjaku builds up, but to be completely honest, those people have no idea what they actually wanted, because simple Google search would tell you why Gege didn't go that route, but I digress. For Choso being a grade 1 sorcerer, he was putting up hands, or in this case blood. He really had Kenjaku annoyed at him the entire fight, and he can keep acting like it's not phasing him. But later in the battle, we clearly see him stressing. Even though Choso takes a backseat for his wife to step into the ring, let's give him his props for giving Kenjaku the work and leaving nothing out. Yuki and Kenjaku get to boxing, and they both quickly realize the fight is gonna be more irritating than math class on a bad day. Unfortunately, Yuki and Tengen's domain plan backfires, and she has to resort to using simple domain instead so she doesn't end up dying. She ends up stopping his ult, and right when Kenjaku gets to yapping, she stands up like Bakugo after his revival. Upon nearly dying, she continues to whoop his ass, with even Choso returning to sneak him. And the explanation of how he didn't get fried there is just absolute comedy. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm gonna move past it, but it's hilarious. After they keep giving him the rage bait of doom, Kenjaku uses his Conqueror's Haki to slam Choso and Yuki Shikigami to the ground. And even though Yuki's still about that action, Kenjaku got something special for her too. In her final moments though, Tengen manages to save Choso, and Yuki manages to use her mask to create a black hole in hopes of killing Kenjaku. However, it fails, and in another fun, unique explanation that I won't go into as to how he didn't die, Kenjaku ends up surviving, and of course Kenjaku ends up achieving Tengen, and his plan with the merger continues. And you know what? While we're on our Kenjaku win streak, the military is also now infiltrating colonies, but getting cooked. After expecting the procedure to be easier than a Friday night, our protagonists get lucky and find out the true reason the military is joining the colonies. After a yap sesh though, Yuji starts pressing Hana because he's worried about her replacing Kugasaki as part of their group. And listen, if that were to have happened, even though I cried at Nobara's death, I wouldn't be mad. People seem to not like Hana's character, but I think it's perfectly fine to have a nothing burger in a story filled with such unique characters with morals and objectives. It's not really that deep, but the people need to dislike someone, so whatever. Her backstory is real simple. She got saved and now saves others, and like I said, it's not really that big of a deal, and it's okay for characters to have a simple story. Not all of them need complex ones, in my opinion. Our protagonist managed to add a new rule to the Culling Game soon after, allowing for sorcerers to leave the Culling Game by inviting in somebody else as a substitute for the cost of 100 points, all in order to get Sumuki out of the game. However, Sumuki is actually a vessel now for a Heian era sorcerer named Yorozu, who adds a rule to the Culling Games to move in and out of colonies instead of getting herself out of the game as planned, all for the sake of fighting Sukuna. And when you speak of the devil himself, he appears. Yuji and Sukuna made a binding vow way back in the story that if Sukuna revived Yuji after ripping his heart out, Yuji would then let Sukuna take over his body for 1 full minute, with the exception of hurting and killing anybody else in the process. But part of that deal is that Yuji would forget about their binding vow. So with that being said, Sukuna finally takes his opportunity and wastes no time immediately taking off Yuji's finger and emoting about it. But Megumi, understanding the circumstances of what just happened, wastes no time either and immediately starts summoning Big Raga, hoping to see them rematch with a different outcome. Before Megumi can do this though, Sukuna stops his wheel and force feeds him Yuji's finger, giving us one of the craziest twists the story has ever seen, with Sukuna taking control of Megumi Fushiguro's body and immediately taunting Yuji. If I had to guess where season 3 would end, it'd probably be this moment here if they didn't want to cram anything else in. And also, I just feel like it's the perfect place to stop, because even though 99.9% of the internet knows what follows after this, that remaining 1% who only watch the anime are going to love that cliffhanger. But as I stated earlier, I'm doing the entire Culling Game arc, so I'm going to keep going until we reach the Shinjuku Showdown start. The moment continues by Sukuna no-diffing Yuji off the building and then uses Nu in a way that Megumi could only dream of. Hana then proceeds to do a maximum output Jacob's Ladder attack on Sukuna in hopes of getting him out of Megumi's body, and to nobody's surprise, Sukuna climbs the ladder. No, I'm just kidding. But he does tank it. Hana then proceeds to fall for the worst impression of Megumi ever, because yes, she is that desperate for the boy. She ends up selling, of course, and then gets cooked by fall damage, leaving Yuji traumatized once again. But if you thought that was enough to get our MC on the floor crying again like Deku, you're mistaken. Yuji's instantly about that action, like always, and he's ready to give Sukuna that Mahito combo. It's a shame though, because Sukuna's allergic to the hands all of a sudden when it comes to fighting Yuji, so instead, he's just spamming his slashes trying to make quick work of him. Yuji's unfazed though, because Sukuna's slashes are weaker than a butter knife right now, due to Megumi's cursed energy being low. So he takes his chance and hits a mean right hook on him. Immediately after, aura farming sorcerer Maki Zenin joins in too, helping Yuji combo this man like a Big Mac meal. Urame then shows up late into the arc again to save the day, again like in Shibuya, and I cannot stand it. She does nothing every arc, and even in the following arc, you know what? I won't get into it. Sukuna proceeds to make fun of Yuji as he runs away as if he wasn't getting his ass whooped by 2 grade 1s. The story continues with Sukuna taking his first bath in thousands of years as he wants to gain full control of his new body with no setbacks. So his next plan of attack is to fight Yorozu, who is currently housing inside Sukumi, and plans to defeat her, all for the sake of making Megumi give up his efforts to regain control after seeing his own body fight and kill his sister. Ryu ends up dying in the most painful way possible due to embarrassing Big Kuna for not getting slashed into 3 on the first attempt. Yorozu's fight with Megkuna is definitely one of the wildest I've seen in the series, with Megkuna refusing to try while Yorozu is pouring her heart out and trying everything to defeat the Big Kuna just so they can get married. But Big Kuna doesn't do affairs, so after he's been weirded out for the last time, he pops his ult and Big Papa Raga one-taps her, leaving Megumi devastated and crying while Sukuna is satisfied as the winner. The story then switches to Kenjaku, who starts adding rules to favor his merger, and that leaves our protagonist with the realization that in order to stop the Culling Game, they have no choice but to defeat Sukuna and Kenjaku with the help of Satoru Gojo, of course. We are then revealed that yes, Gege Akutami is capable of doing fake-outs that in fact favor the story and proceed with the idea of unsealing Satoru Gojo. A little later, we're ready. Hana activates Jacob's Ladder in order to remove the seal on the prison realm, and while our crew is confused, Kenjaku receives a visit from the man himself, giving us our first look at Gojo in 90 chapters. Right when Gojo's about to get started, Sukuna appears and of course ready to shit talk, but Gojo's been spectating low-key cause he knows Sukuna ran away to camp a little earlier. With both sides having things they want to accomplish before they fight, they settle on the date that lands on Christmas Eve 2018. Kenjaku proceeds to ask how he's so confident and that he doesn't expect to lose, which makes Gojo recall a moment very early on in the story where Yuji asked him, who would win if you guys fought? And Gojo, having the iconic answer, says that no, he'd win, with no doubt about it. While Sukuna eats every remaining finger he can, and Kenjaku gets more stale every time he's shown to us, Gojo is being told about the events that occurred during the Shibuya incident, while everyone else is currently preparing themselves in their own way as well, preparing for what's to come. With that being said, the story then time skips to December 24th, where we hear that Kenjaku's been hiding with Sukuna so that Gojo wouldn't kill him this entire time. Fraud. Our protagonists, on the other hand, are cheering Gojo on as he makes his way to Shinjuku, knowing that if he loses, they're up next. But there's no possible way he loses. So even though they know he's the strongest, they still root for their sensei regardless, fully believing that he'll win. The chapter ends with our characters getting ready to see the event play out, knowing that if Gojo wins, then all that's left is taking down Kenjaku, and the Culling Game can completely end. And with all that being said, the Culling Game arc fully comes to a close, leaving us on a cliffhanger, unknowing how the story will play out next. After reading this arc, I don't think at all it's crazy to say that this is Jujutsu Kaisen's best arc. We get introduced to so many fun and interesting characters, all with completely different motivations for even being alive, by the way. Every section of it kept you on your feet, never knowing how any action could turn out, and I know that seems pretty stupid to say, because you're probably like, well, duh, what's the point of a story where you know how it'll turn out? Listen, this is Jujutsu Kaisen. You never know what could happen or how it'll turn out. And that's literally true because our main character has died twice in the story. I think if you're looking for insane level fights, then the next arc will satisfy your hunger for that way more than this one. But what makes this arc so great is easily the characters, even the annoying side characters you just met, have a personality in this arc. Whereas in the previous arcs, the development for anybody who wasn't Todo or someone from Tokyo Jujutsu High was literally nothing. The Culling Game succeeds at being Gege Akutami's best work in terms of writing and pacing. I'd say maybe the only negative was the fact that apart from his moment in the Tomb of the Star, Kenjaku doesn't really do more than just sit back and explain his merger 8 times to whoever he's talking to. The interactions and character development Yuji and Megumi have is actually very refreshing to see, since the prior arc separated our protagonist and deuteragonist from each other. And I understand how people wouldn't be a fan of this arc, by the way, since on the surface it's just another tournament arc, which at this point is really just a standard that shonen series have to go through. But I still love it nonetheless. It was so fun to read, and I found out that I actually prefer seeing sorcerers fight each other rather than seeing sorcerers fighting cursed spirits, so maybe that's what I felt was missing from the early chapters of the series. For a manga about boxing, you wouldn't expect there to be so much care and foreshadowing to be included into the story, but Gege manages it. All your cravings and wants for there to be substance to deaths and wins against one another are here in this section of a peak story. I don't want to drag on much longer since I'm aware this video is on the longer side, but I hope you all enjoyed my reread and thoughts on everything. Luckily, I somehow wasn't spoiled for the events taking place in this arc, but on one unfortunate day, I went to an old friend's house and we ended up watching the English cover to specials on YouTube, and in no time at all, I was spoiled about Sukuna getting into someone else's body, so that was fun. Jujutsu Kaisen will always be an important and eventful series to me because it was really a you have to be there kind of story that's just filled with so much love and twists. It's also where me and my best friend were the closest, so of course that era of when I was watching the series and season 2 was airing will always be very nostalgic and memorable to me. If you all enjoyed this video, I do hope you choose to support me by dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. The support on my last video was just insane for somebody who's new to the scene, so my subscriber goal currently is 150. I do believe we can hit it as long as the algorithm's on my side again, but thank you all so much for watching one of my videos again. I've gone through a lot of obstacles this entire month in order to get this video out in time, so I hope it was worth the wait. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to cover the Shinjuku Showdown arc next, or if you wanted me to cover a different manga or story as well. But with that being said, this was Leva, and I'll catch you all next month for another video. But for now, this was my reread and thoughts as to why Jujutsu Kaisen's The Culling Game is peak and the best arc.
We win it, you roll it, no running away, get focused. Off the drugs, I feel like I'm flowing. Off the love, I feel like I'm flowing. Empty my cup, baby, keep pouring. Need some love, put you in the foreign. Till the tide, that's where I'm